Welcome to the deep dive. You probably know Equinox for their intense workout classes and those bold ad campaigns.
Right.
But today we're exploring a different kind of intensity.
Yeah.
Their legal battles. It turns out Equinox has been hit with multiple lawsuits. Some settled, some ongoing.
Yeah.
Which suggests there might be more than just a few isolated incidents.
That's right. What's really interesting is these legal issues go straight to the heart of any company.
Yeah.
How they treat their employees, whether we're talking about discrimination or wages.
It's almost like a fitness stress test for Equinox.
Well,
We're going to uncover two key areas. A race and gender discrimination case with a dramatic twist, and then a wave of wage and hour lawsuits in California.
okay.
So let's dive into the first case, which really shows how unpredictable legal situations can get. This involves Röbynn Europe, a former training manager at an Equinox in New York. Back in May 2023, she won a huge verdict against the company.
Wow.
$11.25 million.
Yes. $11.25 million is a significant amount, and it's broken down into two parts. $1.25 million was for compensatory damages, essentially meant to make up for the harm she experienced.
Right.
But the part that really raises eyebrows is the other $10 million. That's punitive damages.
$10 million in punitive damages.
Yeah.
That's not just pocket change. What does that tell us about what the jury was thinking?
Well, punitive damages are meant to punish the defendant and prevent them from repeating the behavior, not just to compensate the victim. A $10 million punitive award. That suggests the jury believed Equinox's actions were especially egregious. Maybe even malicious. It's definitely a strong message.
$10 million is a serious blow, even for a company like Equinox. It makes you wonder how they were planning to respond.
Exactly. You'd expect a big legal battle, appeals, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But here's where things take a fascinating turn. Just 3 months later, the entire judgment vanishes.
Oh.
Both sides agreed to vacate it, meaning it's like it never even happened.
Vacated. So it's not just reduced, it's completely gone.
Gone.
That's a pretty dramatic shift. What could have led to that?
It's hard to say for sure based on the information we have.
Right.
It's possible they reached a settlement, but the details aren't public. Equinox did file a motion calling the award unjust and excessive before it was vacated.
Okay.
So maybe they were gearing up for a long fight.
It's like a legal cliffhanger.
It is.
Big win, then poof, gone. It makes you wonder what went on behind the scenes.
It does raise a lot of questions, but unfortunately, we may never know the full story. While that discrimination case was unfolding, Equinox was facing a whole different set of legal challenges in California, specifically around how they treat their workers.
Okay.
This wasn't just one person suing.
Right.
We're talking about class action lawsuits, where a group of employees banded together to take on Equinox.
So we've got this high-profile discrimination case in New York.
Yeah.
And then on the West Coast, things are heating up in a whole different way with these wage and hour lawsuits.
Yes, and these lawsuits allege some pretty serious issues.
Okay.
They claim that Equinox has a pattern of not paying employees for all the time they work, like making them do tasks off the clock.
Right.
And also that they're messing with legally protected meal and rest breaks in California.
Oh, wow.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Some lawsuits even claim that Equinox had policies that discouraged employees from reporting all of their hours.
Policies that discourage them from accurately reporting their hours. Yeah. That's pretty bold. Why would a company do that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's why these allegations are so significant. If it's true, it suggests something systemic, not just a few bad managers making decisions on their own. It implies a deeper issue within the company culture.
So what happened with these California lawsuits? Did they just fizzle out?
Not at all. In September 2023, Equinox agreed to a major settlement for a whopping $36 million.
Wow.
This settlement covered over 15,000 employees and went all the way back to 2015.
Wow, $36 million. That's a hefty price tag.
It is, but it's important to remember that a settlement doesn't necessarily mean Equinox admitted wrongdoing.
Right.
It's often a strategic decision to avoid a long and expensive trial and potentially even larger payouts.
It's like cutting their losses,
Yeah.
right? But does that mean the legal battles are over for Equinox in California?
Not quite. As of September 2024, there was still a federal case going on with over $5 million at stake.
Oh, wow.
And to make things even more complicated, new class action lawsuits kept popping up in California throughout 2024.
Really?
For instance, in September 2024, a lawsuit was filed against Equinox San Rafael LLC, citing a whole range of alleged violations like failing to pay minimum wage and overtime, messing with breaks, the works.
So even after that $36 million settlement, Equinox is still dealing with ongoing legal challenges in California.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if those earlier settlements maybe emboldened more employees to come forward.
It's certainly possible, and it definitely suggests that these issues haven't been fully resolved.
Speaking of legal battles, we know Equinox has a team of lawyers working on these cases. I imagine they're getting quite a workout themselves.
Absolutely. They're likely juggling multiple cases, coordinating strategies, and advising Equinox on how to navigate these challenges.
Yeah.
It's a big undertaking, and it gives us a glimpse into the complex world of corporate law.
You mentioned that Equinox has a whole team of lawyers working on these cases. Are these just general lawyers, or do they bring in specialists for different types of lawsuits?
It's common for companies facing complex legal issues to have specialized legal teams.
Right.
Different lawyers have expertise in different areas. You'll have those who specialize in employment law, others in class action defense, and so on.
So it's not just one lawyer trying to be a jack of all trades. Nope. They're bringing in the A-team for each specific challenge.
Yeah.
It's like assembling a legal Avenger squad.
Exactly. And looking at the firms involved, you can see the strategic approach.
Okay.
For example, Jacqueline Home from JCL Law Firm has been involved in some of the wage and hour cases, while Samuel Allman from Zakai Law Group has worked on the discrimination case. McCarram & Associates is another firm that pops up in these cases. It's a whole network of legal expertise.
That makes sense. Different lawyers, different specialties. It's all about playing to their strengths, just like Equinox does with their fitness instructors, right?
That's a great analogy. And it highlights the strategic thinking that goes into handling these legal battles. It's not just about reacting to lawsuits. It's about anticipating them, planning for them, and minimizing the damage.
So we've got this high-stakes discrimination case in New York that ends with a mysterious vanishing act, and then this wave of wage and hour lawsuits in California that are still making waves. It paints a pretty complex picture of what's going on behind the scenes at Equinox.
It does, and it raises some important questions about how companies like Equinox balance their brand image with their responsibility to their employees. It's a tightrope walk, and it's fascinating to watch how it unfolds.
It's interesting how all these legal issues are playing out alongside Equinox's carefully crafted brand image.
Right.
They're all about luxury, exclusivity, and pushing people to achieve their best.
Yeah.
But then you have these lawsuits alleging unfair treatment of employees.
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a contradiction.
It definitely creates a tension. You have this aspirational brand image.
Right.
But then these lawsuits paint a different picture, raising questions about whether Equinox is living up to its own ideals.
Especially in California, where there's such a strong focus on worker rights.
Absolutely.
That $36 million settlement really highlights the potential consequences when companies fall short of those standards.
Absolutely. California has some of the toughest worker protection laws in the country.
Yeah.
And that settlement shows just how costly it can be for companies to violate those laws.
You know, when we were talking about that $36 million settlement earlier, I noticed that the final approval came in September 2023, just a few weeks after the $11.25 million discrimination verdict was vacated. I can't help but wonder if those two events are connected somehow.
That timing is definitely intriguing. It's possible that seeing that huge judgment looming made Equinox more willing to settle the wage and hour cases to avoid the risk of even more significant payouts. Companies often weigh the costs and benefits of fighting versus settling, and facing multiple lawsuits at once might have tipped the scales towards settlement for Equinox.
So it's like a strategic move to contain the damage.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what their overall legal strategy is. Are they mainly playing defense, trying to minimize the fallout?
Right.
Or are they going on offense, aggressively fighting every claim?
We don't have access to their internal strategy documents, but we can get some clues from how they've handled these cases.
Yeah.
They fought hard against that $11.25 million discrimination judgment, even though it was ultimately vacated. But they've also settled other cases, like that big $36 million payout in California. It seems like they're choosing their battles.
It sounds like a balancing act, weighing legal strategy against public perception and financial risk. It's not just about winning or losing in court. It's about managing the bigger picture.
You're absolutely right. And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating.
Right.
They offer a glimpse into the complex decision-making processes of companies like Equinox. It's not just about fitness and marketing. It's also about navigating these legal challenges and trying to protect their brand reputation.
I keep thinking about that $10 million punitive damage award in the discrimination case.
Right.
What kind of evidence or arguments might lead a jury to make such a significant decision?
Well, to award punitive damages, a jury has to find that the defendant acted with malice, oppression, or fraud.
Right.
In the case of Röbynn Europe, the jury likely heard evidence that convinced them Equinox's actions weren't just a mistake, but deliberate and harmful.
Right.
Maybe they saw a pattern of discriminatory behavior, or maybe there were attempts to cover it up. We don't know the specifics, but the size of that award definitely suggests the jury believed Equinox was in the wrong.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's not just about the fact that discrimination occurred, but the way it was handled, the intent behind it.
Exactly, and that's why punitive damages are so powerful. They're meant to send a message, to deter companies from engaging in this type of behavior in the future.
So it's not just about compensating the victim, it's about holding the company accountable for its actions and hopefully preventing future harm.
Precisely. And in this case, the jury clearly felt that Equinox needed a strong wake-up call.
It's interesting how these lawsuits reveal a different side of Equinox. Their marketing paints this picture of a community, a shared pursuit of wellness.
Right.
But these legal battles suggest a different reality for some employees.
It does create a disconnect, doesn't it?
It does.
You have this brand image of inclusivity and empowerment, but then you have these allegations of discrimination and wage theft.
Right.
It makes you wonder about the gap between the image and the actual experience of working at Equinox.
And that gap can be damaging to a brand, especially one that relies so heavily on perception and aspiration.
Absolutely. In today's world, consumers are more aware than ever of corporate practices and social responsibility. They want to support companies that align with their values. If Equinox is seen as a company that doesn't treat its employees fairly, it could alienate some of its customer base.
It's like a chink in their armor.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the authenticity of their brand message. And the fact that these lawsuits are happening in California, a state known for its progressive values, adds another layer of complexity.
It's a reminder that even the most successful and well-known companies are not immune to these types of issues.
Right.
And it highlights the importance of transparency and accountability, not just for legal reasons, but for maintaining a positive brand reputation.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the legal side of things. But at the end of the day, these lawsuits represent real people.
Yes.
Real employees who are alleging they were treated unfairly.
Yeah.
Their stories matter.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these lawsuits are just the tip of the iceberg. Many people who experience workplace discrimination or wage theft never file a lawsuit. They might fear retaliation, or they might not have the resources to pursue legal action. So the cases we're seeing are likely just a fraction of the potential issues that might be happening, not just at Equinox, but in other companies as well.
That's a sobering thought. It makes you wonder how widespread these problems really are.
It does raise concerns about the systemic nature of these issues, and it highlights the need for greater awareness, education, and advocacy for workers' rights.
So what can we as consumers do? We're not lawyers. We can't file lawsuits or change company policies, but does that mean we're powerless?
Not at all. We still have power as consumers. We can choose where we spend our money, and we can support companies that align with our values.
That's a good point. It's about being conscious consumers and making informed choices.
Exactly. We can do our research, read reviews, ask questions about a company's labor practices and their commitment to diversity and inclusion. And if we see something that doesn't sit right, we can speak up, whether it's through social media, contacting the company directly, or choosing to take our business elsewhere.
So it's about using our voices and our wallets to promote change. We might not be able to single-handedly solve these problems, but we can definitely play a part.
And collectively, those individual choices can make a difference. Companies pay attention to consumer sentiment and are more likely to address issues that are impacting their bottom line.
So it's not just about boycotting companies we disagree with, it's also about supporting the ones that are doing things right.
Exactly. It's about sending a clear message to companies that we value fair treatment of employees and that we're willing to put our money where our mouths are.
That's a powerful message, and it's one that every consumer can embrace.
And it's a message that resonates particularly strongly in places like California, where there's a deep-rooted commitment to social justice and workers' rights. These lawsuits against Equinox are a reminder that even in a state with strong legal protections, there's still work to be done to ensure that all employees are treated fairly and with respect.
It's been a whirlwind tour through Equinox's legal battles.
It has been.
And it's clear these cases raise some pretty big questions about the company's practices and their impact on employees.
Absolutely.
These lawsuits offer a unique window into how even seemingly successful companies can have internal struggles.
Right.
It reminds us that there's often more going on beneath the surface.
Definitely.
We've seen how a discrimination case can take a sudden turn, how wage and hour lawsuits can snowball into a series of legal challenges,
right?
And how companies like Equinox deploy entire teams of legal experts to manage the fallout.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the world of business is never just black and white.
It's a web of interconnected issues, from employee relations to legal strategy to public perception. And these cases give us a glimpse into how companies navigate that complexity.
So knowing what we know now about these legal issues, does it change how you view Equinox as a brand? Do you see them differently now?
That's the million-dollar question, and ultimately it's up to each individual to decide how they feel about it.
Right.
But having this knowledge allows for a more informed perspective. It's not just about the glossy ads or the high-end facilities. It's also about, understanding how a company treats its employees and how it responds when those employees raise concerns.
Like we've peeled back the curtain a bit.
Yeah.
And it's seen the inner workings.
Yeah, the gears turning.
The gears turning behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And sometimes what we find there isn't always pretty.
Right. It's a reminder that companies are made up of people, and people are complex. There will always be challenges and conflicts, and it's how those challenges are addressed that really defines a company's character.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, it's important to remember this is just a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
These legal battles are ongoing, and new developments could emerge at any moment.
Absolutely. The story isn't over yet. It'll be fascinating to see how Equinox responds to these challenges moving forward, whether they make substantial changes to their policies and practices or continue to fight these battles in court. Only time will tell what the ultimate outcome will be.
And as always, we encourage you to stay curious, keep an eye on these developments, and let us know if there are other companies or topics you'd like us to deep dive into. Until next time, happy diving.